Good evening, it's Lana, and tonight it's Monday Journal Hookum. So a little motivational Monday going on. I'm all in red. I'm feeling very grounded. How are y'all doing out there? So, a lot of things going on around us. You know, a lot of people who are experiencing a little bit of chaos and craziness, right? So, you know, when we're in a space of awareness, we can reflect and step back and be the calm among the chaos and hold that space for those around us who are going through times of turmoil and trauma and stress and anxiety, whatever others are going through. The more grounded we are, the more we are in our own personal awareness, we can hold that space for others. But that's why we have to work on ourselves first to be able to extend and support others. And that the idea that you can help or fix someone is this illusionary construct that we can control our environment. It's really not about the other person that you want to try to help or fix them, but it's more about making you feel comfortable. That you feel like, well, if I get them to do this, it'll make me feel more comfortable about the circumstances that we are both interchanging, experiencing, right? The divine dance. Another person doesn't make you feel the discomfort. It is just a trigger within you that says, oh, this doesn't feel right. And so therefore we reach out thinking we have to fix what's going on around us when everything starts from within. I don't know if any of you all out there experience this. You think you're just being so sweet and kind. You know, I try to help and do things for others, and you know, I know that person would be so much better off if. Whenever you think you know better for another person, you're imposing yourself. You are projecting your own ideals, your own personal experiences, filters, belief systems. That's not helping, and it's very kind and humbling to step back into yourself and recognize, I don't know better for someone else. In fact, that is the subtlest form of control, thinking you do know better for another person. And that you're not truly loving them in the space that they're in. You're not truly loving them where they're at in this moment in time when you think, you know, they'd be so much better if they did this. The moment you have attached conditions to your love, it is no longer truly love. It's no longer conditional love, obviously. Unconditional love. Conditional love, which is what most people base their true love ideals on, is based upon must meet all these requirements for it to be love for me. When unconditional love says, I'm going to love you even though you might drive me crazy. I still think you have a good heart. I still see your wholeness within your soul as it radiates from you. And I accept you as you are, and I'm not going to try to fix you. Right? It's quite humbling when you step out of yourself, because we're usually so caught up in here, we don't even recognize that we're projecting it out there. Right? This mind is so tricky. It thinks it's got the inside scoop, and it thinks it's got control of everything. And that in itself is the biggest illusion we all have. Thinking we can control our external circumstances when it all means we need to go within and work on the inner circumstances. You know? Tend to your own soil. Right? This is where you'll truly flourish and thrive. Because if you're trying to work on the outside stuff, that inside is going to suffer. You have to start from within so you no longer go without. Right? So, you know, sharing is caring. If this resonates with y'all, if you've never been here watching me doing this on a Monday night, I will randomly sift through my old journals, and I will just read what was going on, what I wrote in those moments. And so I have several journals, several books. They're dispersed all over the place. Over the years, it's been interesting to watch because I've lost some of them. And you know what? Sometimes It's like a purging and losing of old energies so that you can allow something new in. I used to actually write from back to front just because I was quirky like that, you know. I would just kind of do something a little different. And it was more my own thing, just for me. It's part of my creative nature, right? So ultimately, if you yourself are a writer or you're someone who needs to reflect, journaling is the most cathartic thing you could ever do. It is the most healing, which is what catharsis is all about, healing in process, right? When we sit down and we take the time to write things out, we process. When we actually reflect upon what is going on within ourselves, when we write it down, more stuff unfolds. It's like a flow, right? You're allowing energy to move. Whether you speak it out loud, you write it down, you voice memo it, which I do that as well. I have journals all over the place. It's nutso. I have things on little pieces of paper. You know, I pull out this, for example, all throughout it are like papers, and then if you look on my computer, that's a whole nother ball game in itself. Where I'm like, okay, stuff will fall out of my books. And it's impressive to me sometimes, how do I keep it all together? So, tonight, I have no idea what I'm going to pull open. Ooh, wait a minute. I had a couple different ideas, and then this is what makes it so much fun. It's random. It is ultimately random. And so I didn't know where I was going to open up to. And I had kind of earmarked a spot which I hadn't read. But since it's a book from like 2011, 12, 13. Oh, look, a cheddar cheesy tomato sauce. This is also how I randomly would find some of my old recipes. Or my Applejack smoothie. Wait a minute here. Let me look at that for a second. For those of you who pay attention to my food, there's always something good in here. Let's see what the Applejack smoothie says. This is from December of 2012. Coconut oil, cacao beans, cinnamon powder, dates, banana, lucuma, shilajit, cinnamon, nutmeg, turmeric, ashwagandha, ginger, coconut flour, cardamom powder, which is what gives it the Applejack's flavor, is what I said. You can use water or nutmeg. I used a Pau d'Arco chai blend that I had put together. Pau d'Arco is very good for cleaning the liver. And then I've got, got all sorts of goodies in here. There's just a bunch of recipes in here. Gotta love it. This is what, this is why I journal. I have so much I can look through. So going back, I just opened up to November of 2012, and I'm going to see what I was doing there. I do remember that period because I was still working in Italy for NATO, and I was coming to the end of that particular job specifically because NATO was moving to a new location. After years of being in Bagnoli, in Naples, the Bagnoli area, they were moving out to Lago Patria, which was a new radar site they had built up so that they could, have more space, and it was outside of the city. And for those of us who lived downtown, we really preferred to take the train to work, and to move where they were relocated meant you were going to have to drive out there. And as it is, traffic in Naples, that's another life. So, let's see, today we are in the 20th of November. So let's see, what, 20 November, I've got 26, 27, 25, ooh, let's see, 5 November, Look where you're at and trace it back. This is a great example of it. When you go back in your you go back into the archives, you dig out the old you, and you go, ooh, is that really who I was, or was it someone I was trying to be? And then you ask yourself right now, am I yet myself, or still a version of myself that I want others to see? It's a really nice way to check yourself and see how far you've come, right? So let's see. So this is before I came back to the United States from Italy. I'm trying to figure out. Oh, there's my pumpkin coconut curry with cauliflower and macadamia rice. Let's see, I'm going to have more recipes to share with y'all. I'm just going to see what this says. Well, let's just go through it. So 25 November of 2012. It is now 2017. This is now 5 years later. And I also have the November of last year pulled up in my iPhone as well. So we'll go from one to the other and see how they all connect, if there's a connection at all. So make yourself comfy. Make sure you have some water. Hydration is key. Make yourself cozy in a nice seat. I had a very relaxing appointment with my chiropractor today, and boy, I could have just crashed. I was completely out today. It's amazing how you can get so cozy and not want to move. Anybody else out there? Okay. So thoughts, some things that were going through my mind at the time. And I wrote about my mom. And I haven't really spoken a lot, but her birthday's coming up. My mother's birthday is the 26th of November. Now the joke in her family is number one, she's the sixth child of 9, technically 11, because my grandfather remarried. And I always joked with her. She said she was born on Thanksgiving the year she was born. And so I said, so they knew they weren't getting just a turkey, were they? So you were like delivery. So she, okay. It was my own little funny thing. I said, they had more than just a turkey. They had you. So I wrote, Mom over the years has recounted how my aunts and uncles had set her up with my father and pawned her off. And this is the thing about stories that we tell ourselves. Instead of seeing the story as it was, or just the experience that it was, we create even more traumatic stories. You always tell the stories of your life, your past, from the last time you told the story, which means you change the story all along, and each time you tell it. And then, what most people don't realize is every time you tell a story, you're recounting it and reliving it. When you're reliving it, again, your body's going to go through similar physiology as if you're there again. And that's why I like to say you have the opportunity, and once you're aware, the mindfulness to change the story, to rewrite that story, make it a better story, better experience than how you wish it would have actually been in your life, right? So we have, ironically, not seeing the blessing in her union, no matter how brief, she still carried her pains over into the relationship, which could have been more loving had there been understanding and compassion. She felt abandoned, unloved, and cast out. She also didn't see how we, children of hers, heard her animosity that could be and might have been interpreted as regret for even having us because we were born of their relationship and union. Gratefully, I see the cycle and how she has never been able to see she was not abandoned, as she had to have secretly wished and manifested her release from her family, who she claimed pained her deliberately. For a child who seeks acceptance, no matter how cruelly accept her, there is the conflict of knowing, awareness of what's not right, but wanting to be a part of the family and love, no matter the definition. Children also try different tactics to test levels of love like running away, to see who cares enough to seek and find them, to say nothing is wrong, to see if they care enough to prod deeper with inquiry into what obviously is not okay. I know I did this myself growing up. I know I went to extremes to be noticed for attention and loved. Although I know Mom hadn't been strong enough to look inside herself for forgiveness, she hadn't confronted her own part in life, the power she possesses to move forward by recognizing and acknowledging the many blessings that came out of what she calls atrocities, attacks, violence in her growing up. And so being the oldest child of 3 daughters and constantly hearing from my mother how I wish I just want to tell you girls, I have so much to share with you. If you only knew. And for all of our lives saying, yeah, tell us more. And then her saying it had to be perfect circumstances. She wanted to sit at a table because that was her definition of perfect conditions to make her feel at ease that she could share. But see, people can say they want to do things, but that doesn't mean they have the courage and can pull out that vulnerability within themselves, the vulnerability that requires them to actually speak it is, or accept and allow into themselves what it is they claim they want, wish, or desire. So I don't even remember what this was. I had a printout for this as well. I had returned to Bellinopoli in a different capacity, lower paying job, smaller apartment with less light and different lifestyle, gluten-free vegan diet, and a desire for more spiritual social atmosphere. Part of me mourning my old life. I recognize I may not miss the bars and such. I miss certain comforts, such as material comforts, the money to buy desirous items. My disappointment in my situation was a direct reflection of my expectations to return to an old lifestyle I'd previously maintained. This also showed my connection, appreciation, compassion, and admiration for one of my other friends. She was also going through the same changes as many of us are, shedding layers, releasing the old patterns and that which no longer served. All of this had come to a head, and my mojo dwindled, my routine suffered. I did only the bare minimum to maintain my momentum. The thought of all I needed to do, reviewing, writing, noting, such felt overwhelming. Time felt fleeting, and I couldn't keep up with my thoughts, reflections, inspirations, and feelings. The blessing lay directly smack dab in the midst of all of this. Without sinking into an abyss, what else could I witness? The change that was occurring in my life. And so for those of you out there, I haven't spoken too deeply about my past life. I mean, it's really easy for me to say I was in the military and I became a government contractor, but my previous life before coming back from Italy in 2000 and I came back the first time in 2008. When I shed that layer of my life and was still attached at the same time, the reality was I went from 6 figures of a salary and being able to buy and do whatever it was I desired. But the irony was that I was just so fixated on constantly working that I didn't do everything I wished and wanted to do. I wasn't having all those full, rich experiences. Whereas now, although I may not make not near as much, not even remotely close to what I was able to maintain my life back then, that now I feel so much more fulfilled and have a much richer life than I could have ever had back then because of the state of mind, the appreciation I have, the more in touch with myself I am, really enlivening my senses and being sensually available to everything in my life, and the awareness, the mindfulness, the smelling and the hearing, I've always been very attuned and in touch, but not to the degree that I seem to have even cultivated further in my life. So living in Naples, Italy, living in other cultures for me was one way to enhance something I was already seeking and desiring to experience. And so now, even so, though I desire to again spread my wings like my butterfly self and socialize abroad and to create all of these gorgeous retreats in other countries, because for me, it's about getting cultured and experience and the richness that is. I can have that right here. I really don't need to go anywhere else. But I feel like I want to just experience it all. And I've always been like that since I was a child. I've always wanted to go out and meet people and hear their stories and listen and also engage in the interaction, engaging with one another. That's the real true richness and beauty of life. That's sensuality, is really listening to be heard, to hear and understand. And you hear more, the more aware and attuned you are. You hear more than what's being said a lot of times. For some people, it's harder for them to hear because they're listening to react or respond. They're not listening to hear the transmission of what's being said and then some. They're listening with the, I have to respond, I have something to say to what that was being said to me. Or they want to be heard just as much as they claim to be listening. So there's this, again, you have to have receptive communication, compassionate communication, which means you, yourself, if you want to be heard, have to also take the time to also want to listen. We're not all perfect. I have my moments. And when I get excitable, I can jump ahead. And the unfortunate thing is that sometimes I'm so much more attuned to things than I really play out. I will have a conversation with my mother, and she wants me to take it down to her notch level, which isn't always easy for me because I've always been a very person. Since I was a child, it's like boom, 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 boom. I could finish sentences for people, which not always really a kind thing to do, by the way. Because again, people want to be heard. They don't necessarily want someone to speak over them, to talk for them, or to assume that somebody else knows what they're going to say. And here's the thing. It's a fine line when you think you know what someone's going to say and you try to preempt it and say it for them, because guess what? I've been humbled many a time to learn that I was wrong. And so never assume that you know. Never assume you know somebody. Allow them to be. They may surprise you, especially if it's somebody that has always proven to be less than what you want them to be. If something triggers you in someone, allow that person to surprise you, and maybe it's not what you think. Because you know what? You can also manifest the worst case scenario. So you got to kind of scrub your brain, which is what meditation is, and take it down and relax and allow dialogue to be this ebb and flow. Receive it so that you can also give it, and give it so that you can also receive it, right? Hand off. Open hands, open dialogues. And so, in about a year ago, let's see if I've got the 20th, because today's the 20th. So I actually taught a year ago the Kriya for self-massage. And here's what's flowing into me now regarding the wigs and my desire to totally unload them. So my dad has all these wigs that I personally I've taken a lot of them off of his hands, and I've said, I want to see if I can help remove them out of the space up there so that he has space so he can do things. Because otherwise things get hoarded and get tucked away and stuffed in the barn or in a back room, and it's clutter. And that in itself is a mental, that is exhausting. So when we have clutter around ourselves, that's also a reflection of what's going on within ourselves. I know, I subscribe. And so this clutter, whether it started here or out there, it really doesn't matter, because it's intertwined. The idea that you could help somebody, and I thought, take these wigs, and I'd like to actually, personally would prefer to donate them. And so that's what I wrote in here about how I'd prefer to donate them, realizing how I can use that as a networking opportunity in a way that could actually benefit people. And then reach out, like one of the ideas I had was for cancer patients, children and adults, and abused women, for self-esteem and empowerment. But one of the interesting things I remembered when I was looking into this, there's a lot of cancer societies and stuff, and they just sell it. So to me, I don't like to throw money at donating to charities and such, because I feel personally like I'm not really making a difference. Money doesn't make any difference if I'm not serving from here. And this is why we created the group. Because to me, I feel like even though, I might not reach a whole lot of people, I'm reaching the right people. Again, I believe in the power of intention, and I believe that when your vision is huge enough, if you just keep working at it, eventually it will reach those who need to hear it. And so whether my message resonates with you or not, there is somebody out there that is looking for it, is willing and open to receive it, which is why we are so passionate about sharing your playground, your area here, with those around you. I don't care if you know them, like them, they don't like. You know what? Sharing is caring. And the more we spread the love, we really are about the web of inclusion. We really want to embrace every single person. We don't have to agree with everybody, and we don't have to give our opinions, but always ask, is it kind? Is it going to be serving? Is it going to be loving? That's the most important thing, is people really want to feel embraced. If you want to serve, you want to hold that space. And that's why I consider this group to be a very special, sacred space for everyone. For those of you especially who feel like you can come here and share yourself and tell your stories. If you're having a good day, you're having a bad day, celebrate the milestones, celebrate the small steps. I'd love to dance in my kitchen. That is my thing. I love to dance if I can. And dancing in my kitchen brings me joy, and it puts me in a special space to be able to communicate and share with all of y'all in another way, right? So, I was asking for friends who might be interested in helping, and I said at that time, I was saying to myself, I need to establish my niche and how I can use my home and property further to extend out from that exposure. Donations, helping, I want to build a yoga pad, and I want to use crystals to do it. And so at some point, I've always thought it would be a cool thing to have people send crystals from all over the world and create this yoga pad made of the crystals in the shape of a lotus flower in the center with the flower of life growing out, and just a space that would be covered over, but with this glistening and all these beautiful blingy stones and crystals. And I just thought it was a beautiful idea. So it's something in my mind of what I've always wanted to do. And then I had a Christmas wig party idea for my girlfriends to try on wigs. We did do that, and that was a lot of fun. And then I was looking at some other stuff that was going on at the time. And then I guess that's pretty much what I was working on, was coming up with some of my retreat stuff. So at the time, I had come up with a whole bunch of interesting stuff there. I'm trying to see if this will... I thought I made a little mistake, but we're good. So that was last year. Now, moving on to now, I'm just going to pull out a book. Let's see what we got. So this is another book. I probably shouldn't have done that. If you were on last week, I was playing... Ooh, hello. I was playing with... And I love this book, The Book of Secrets by Osho. I bought this book back when I was living in Italy. I think it was in 2005 or 6, maybe even 2004. I just lost track. And I've just now opened up, I wasn't sure I was going to use this book or I was going to use The Game of Life and How to Play It, which is small but powerful. If you don't have that one, we'll throw that up there too at some point with the link. So the title of this chapter, 64, is the chapter, Consciousness is Bliss. Gee, I wonder what that's all going to come out. Couple questions. How is it that most choose suffering? How can we hope for enlightened society? All right, we need the pillow. Wait, that other one's going to be better. So, the first question. Is it that there are only two alternatives before man, a life of abiding sorrow and suffering, or one of divinity and bliss? And this choice lies with him? How is it that most have chosen the path of sorrow and suffering? This is going to be juicy, I can already tell. It is a very significant question, but very delicate also. The first thing is to be understood is that life is very paradoxical. And because of that, many things happen. There are the two alternatives. Either man could be in heaven or in hell. And there is no third possibility. Either you can be in deep suffering or you can be without suffering and in deep bliss. These are the only two possibilities, two openings, two doors, two modes of being. Then the question necessarily arises why man chooses to be in suffering. Man never chooses to be in suffering. Man always chooses to be in bliss. And then there comes the paradox. If you choose to be in bliss, you will be in suffering, because to be in bliss means to be choiceless. This is the problem. If you choose to be in bliss, you will be in suffering. If you don't choose, if you simply remain a witness, non-choosing, you'll be in bliss. So it is not a question of choosing between bliss and suffering. Deep down, it is a question of choosing between choosing and non-choosing. Why does it happen that whenever you choose, you are in suffering? Because choice divides life. Something has to be cut and thrown away. You don't accept the total. You accept something in it and you deny something. That's what choice means, and life is a totality. If you choose something and deny something, that which you deny will come to you, because life cannot be divided. And that which you deny, just because you deny it, becomes a powerful thing over you. You really become afraid of it. Nothing can be denied. You can only close your eyes to it. You can only escape. You can become inattentive to it, but it is always there, hidden, waiting for the moment to assert. So if you deny suffering, if you say you are not going to choose suffering, then in a subtle way you have chosen it. Now it will always be around you. One thing. Life is totality. And the first thing, and life is change. The second thing, these are basic truths. So let me reread that. Life is totality. That's the first thing. And life is change. That's the second thing. Meaning, really, they're not separate. Not at all. The separation is only something that is constructed by the mind. These are basic truths. You cannot divide life. Secondly, nothing is stagnant. Nothing can be. So when you say, I am not going to suffer, I am going to choose a blissful mode of living, you will cling to happiness. And whenever you cling to something, you want it and hope it will be permanent. And nothing can be permanent in life. Life is in flux. It is a flux. So when you cling to happiness, you are again creating suffering, because this happiness will pass away. Nothing can remain. It is a river, and the moment you cling to a river, you are creating a situation in which you will be frustrated, because the river will move. Sooner or later, you'll find that the river has gone far away. It is not now with you. Your hands are empty and your heart is frustrated. If you cling to bliss, there will be moments of bliss, but they are going to pass away. Life is a flux. Nothing can be permanent here except you. Except you, nothing is eternal here. And if you cling to a changing thing, then when it is gone, you will suffer. And it is not only that when it is gone, you will suffer. If you have the mind of clinging while it is there, you will not be able to enjoy it because you will be constantly afraid that it is going to be lost. If you cling, you will miss the opportunity also. Later on, you will suffer, and right now you will not enjoy because the fear is just around the corner. Sooner or later, it has to go. The guest has to come to your house, and you know he is a guest, and tomorrow morning he will leave. You start suffering for the future. Tomorrow morning he will leave, and that pain, that suffering, that anguish comes upon you now, right now. You cannot be happy while the guest is in your home. While the guest is with you, you cannot be happy because you are already in anxiety and anguish that tomorrow morning he will leave. So while he is here, you will not be happy. And when he is gone, you will be unhappy. This is what is happening. The first thing, life cannot be divided. If you divide, only then can you choose. And that which you choose is flux-like. Sooner or later it will be gone, and that which you have denied will fall over you. You cannot escape it. You cannot say, I will live only in the days, and I will escape the nights. You cannot say, I will live only with the ingoing breath, and I will not allow the outgoing breaths. Life is a rhythm of opposites. The breath comes in and goes out. Between these two opposites, ingoing and outgoing, you exist. Suffering is there, happiness is there. Happiness is just like an ingoing breath. Suffering is just like the outgoing breath. Or day and night, the rhythm of opposites. You cannot say, I will live only if I am happy. When I am not happy, I will not live. You can take this attitude, but this attitude will make you suffer more. No one chooses suffering, remember. You ask why man has chosen to suffer? No one has chosen to suffer. You have chosen not to suffer. You have chosen to be happy. And you have chosen strongly. You are doing everything to be happy, and that is why you are in suffering and why you are not happy. So what is to be done? Remember that life is total. You cannot choose. The whole life has to be lived. There will be moments of happiness and there will be moments of suffering, and both have to be lived. You cannot choose. Because life is both. Otherwise the rhythm will be lost. And without rhythm there will be no life. It is just like music. You hear some music. There are notes, sounds, and after each sound there is a silence, a gap. Because of that gap, that interval of silence in the sound, because of both, the opposites, music is created. If you say, I will choose only sounds and I am not going to take the gaps, there will be no music. It will be a monotonous thing. It will be dead. Those gaps give life to sound. This is the beauty of life, that through opposites it exists. Sound and silence that creates music, the rhythm. The same is with life. Suffering and happiness are two opposites. You cannot choose. If you choose, you have become a victim. You will suffer. If you become aware of this totality, of the opposites in the way that life functions, you don't choose, the first thing. And when you don't choose, there is no need to cling. There is no meaning in clinging. When suffering comes, you enjoy the suffering. And when happiness comes, you enjoy the happiness. When the guest is at your home, you enjoy him. When he is gone, you enjoy the suffering, the absence, the pain. I say enjoy both. This is the path of wisdom. Enjoy both. Don't choose. Whatsoever falls upon you, accept it. It is your fate. It is how life is, and nothing can be done about it. If you take this attitude, there is no choosing. You have become choiceless. And when you are choiceless, you will become aware of yourself. Because now you are not worried about what's happening, so you are not outgoing. You are not worried about what is happening around you. Whatsoever happens, you will enjoy it. You will live it. You will go through it, and you will experience it, and you will gain something out of it, because every experience is an expansion of consciousness. If there is really no suffering, you will be poor for it, because suffering gives you depth. A man who has not suffered will always remain on the surface. Suffering gives you depth. Really, if there is no suffering, you will be saltless. You will be nothing, just a boring phenomenon. Suffering gives you tone, a keenness. A quality comes to you which only suffering can give, which no happiness can give. A man who has remained always in happiness and comfort, who has not suffered, will not have any tone. He will be just a lump of being. There cannot be any depth. Really, there cannot be any heart. The heart is created through suffering. Through pain, you evolve. If a man has only suffered and he has not known any happiness, then too he will not be rich. Because richness comes through opposites. The more you move in opposites, the deeper you evolve. A man who has simply suffered will become a slave. He who has not known any moments of happiness will not really be alive. He will become an animal. He will just exist anyhow. There will be no poetry, no song in the heart, no hope in the eyes. There he will settle down to his pessimistic existence. He will not move. He will be simply a stagnant pool of consciousness, and a stagnant pool of consciousness is not consciousness. By and by he will become unconscious. That's why if there is too much pain, you fall unconscious. So just happiness will not be of much help, because there will be no challenge. Just pain will not be of much growth, because there will be no reason to struggle, to hope, to dream. There will be no fantasy. Both are needed, and life exists between both as a very delicate tension, a subtle tension. If you understand this, then you don't choose. Then you know how life functions, how life is. This is the way of life. It moves through happiness, it moves through suffering, and gives you tone, gives you meaning, and gives you depth. So both are good. I say both are good. I say don't choose between the two. I say both are good, don't choose. Rather enjoy both, rather allow both to happen. Be open without any resistance. Don't cling to one and don't resist the other. Let no resistance be your motto. I will not resist life, whatsoever life gives me. I will be ready to take it available, and I will enjoy it. The nights are also good and beautiful, and suffering has a beauty of its own. No happiness can have that beauty. Darkness has its own beauty. Day has its own beauty. There is no comparison, and there is no choice. Both have their dimensions to work in. The moment this consciousness arises in you, you will not choose. You will just be as a witness, and you will enjoy. This choicelessness will become bliss. This choicelessness will become bliss. Bliss is not contrary to suffering. Bliss is a quality which you can bring to anything whatsoever, even to suffering. Buddha cannot suffer, but that doesn't mean that suffering doesn't happen to him. Remember, suffering happens as much to Buddha as it happens to you. But he cannot suffer because he knows the art of enjoying it. He cannot suffer because he remains blissful. Even in suffering, he remains festive, meditative, alive, enjoying, open, non-resistant. Suffering happens to him, but he is not touched. Suffering comes and goes, just like a breath coming in and going out. He remains himself. The suffering cannot push him aside. The suffering cannot push him off his feet. Nothing can push him. Neither suffering nor happiness. You exist like a pendulum. Everything pushes you, everything. You cannot even be really happy, because happiness will also kill you. You get so involved in it. I remember once it happened that a poor schoolmaster, very old, poor, retired, won a lottery. The wife was afraid, and she thought, this is going to be too much for the old man. $5,000 is too much for him. Even a $5 note gives him so much happiness, so $5,000 may kill him. She ran to the nearby church, and went to the priest and told him what had happened. She said, the old man is out, but he is just coming back. This is his time to return, so do something. $5,000. Just the news will kill him. The priest said, don't be afraid. I know the human mind and the way it functions. I know the physiology, the psychology. I will come. So the priest came to the house. The moment they arrived, the old man also arrived. So the priest started. He said, "Suppose you won the lottery of $5,000, what would you do?" The old man thought about it, pondered over it, and he said, "I would give half of the money to the church." The priest fell down dead. It was too much. Even happiness will kill you because you get so involved. You cannot remain out of anything. Suffering or happiness, whatsoever comes to your door, you get so involved in it, you are just pushed off your feet. You are no more there. Just a breeze comes in the house and you are no more there. What I am saying is that if you don't choose, if you remain alert and aware of this, that this is how life is, days and nights come and go, suffering and happiness you just witness. There is no clinging to happiness, no hankering for happiness, and no escape from suffering. You must remain in yourself, centered, rooted. This is what bliss is. So remember, bliss is not something opposite to suffering. Don't think that when you become blissful, there will be no suffering. Nonsense. Suffering is a part of life. It ceases only when you are not. When you are completely disappear from the body, suffering ceases. When there is no birth, suffering ceases. But then you are lost in the totality. Then you are no more. A drop is falling into the ocean and no more. While you are suffering, while you are, suffering will continue. It is part of life. But you can become aware, then suffering happens somewhere around you. But it never happens to you. But then happiness also never happens to you. Don't think that happiness will go on happening to you and suffering will not happen. Both will not happen to you. They will just happen around, just on the periphery, and you will be centered in yourself. You will see them happening, you will enjoy them happening, but they will happen around you. They will not happen to you. This becomes possible if you don't choose. That's why I said this is delicate, this is subtle, because of the paradoxical life. You choose happiness and you fall in suffering. You try to escape from suffering and more suffering is invited. So you can take it as an ultimate law, whatsoever you choose, the opposite will be your fate. I say it as an ultimate law, whatsoever you choose, the opposite will be your fate. So, whatsoever is your fate, remember you have chosen it by choosing the opposite. If you are suffering, you have chosen your suffering by choosing happiness. Don't choose happiness and suffering disappears. Don't choose it all. Then nothing can happen to you and everything is in flux except you. That has to be understood very deeply. Only you are the constant factor in existence, nothing else. Only you are the eternity, nothing else. Your awareness is never a flux. Suffering comes, you witness it. Then happiness comes, you witness it. Then nothing comes, you witness it. Only one thing remains constant. Witness. Witnessing, and witnessing is you. You were a child. Or if you move even further backwards, once you were just an atomic cell. You cannot even imagine it. Just an atomic cell in your mother's womb, not even visible to the naked eye. If that cell comes before you and you encounter it, you will not even be able to recognize that once that you were that. Then you were a child, then you became young, and now you're old, or lying in your deathbed. Many things happened. Your whole life has been a flux. Nothing remained the same for even 2 moments. Heraclitus says you cannot step twice in the same river. And this he says for the river of life. You cannot have 2 similar moments. The moment that has gone cannot be repeated. It is gone forever. You cannot have it again. The same cannot exist. In such a great flux, only one thing remains within you remains the same, the witnessing. Right? If you could have witnessed in your mother's womb, the quality of consciousness would have been the same. If you could have witnessed when you were a child, the quality of witnessing would have been the same. Young or dying, while just dying on your bed, if you can witness, the quality of consciousness will be the same. The only one thing deep down within you is your witnessing self, your consciousness. That remains the same. Everything else changes. And if you cling to any object of the world of change, you will suffer. Nothing can be done about it. You are trying to do the impossible. That's why you suffer. I know you never choose, but that is not the point. If you suffer, you have chosen it indirectly. Once you become aware of this indirectness of life, this paradoxical quality of life, you will stop choosing. When choice falls, the world has disappeared. When choosing falls, you've encountered the absolute. But that is possible only when the choosing mind disappears completely. A choiceless awareness is needed, and then you will be in bliss. Rather, you will continue to happen, but nothing can make you suffer. Even if you are suddenly thrown into hell, just by your presence there, for you it will be a hell no more. Someone asked Socrates where he would like to go, so Socrates said, I don't know whether there is a hell and a heaven. I don't know whether they are there or not, but I will not choose between them. My only prayer will be this: allow me to be alert wherever I am. Let me be fully aware wherever I am. Whether it is hell or heaven, that is irrelevant, because if you are fully alert, hell disappears. Hell is your being not aware. If you are fully aware, heaven appears. Heaven is your being fully aware. Really, there are no such geographical places as hell or heaven. And don't go on thinking in childish terms that someday you will die and God will send you to heaven or hell according to your doings, according to whatsoever you have done on earth. No, you carry your hell and heaven within you. Wherever you move, you carry your hell or heaven within you. When God cannot do anything, if suddenly you meet him, he will look like hell. You carry your hell with you. You project it wherever you are. You will suffer. The encounter will just be death-like, intolerable. You may become unconscious. Whatsoever happens to you, you carry within you. The seed of consciousness is the seed of the whole of existence. So remember, if you suffer, you have chosen it. Consciously, unconsciously, directly, indirectly, you have chosen it. It is your choice and you are responsible. No one else is responsible. But in our mind, in our confused mind, everything is upside down. If you suffer, you think you suffer because of others. You suffer because of you. No one can make you suffer. That is impossible. And even if someone makes you suffer, it is your choice to be in suffering through him. You have chosen him, and you have chosen a particular type of suffering through him. No one can make you suffer. It is your choice. But you always go on thinking that if the other changes or if the other is doing something else, you will not suffer. I've heard Mullah Nasruddin was filling out a report because he had crashed his car into a parked car. He was filling out a report and many things were asked. When he came to the part where it was asked what the driver of the other vehicle could have done to avoid the accident, he filled it. He should have parked the car somewhere else. The car was parked there. He should have parked it somewhere else because of the accident had happened. And this is what you're doing. Always the other is responsible. He should have done something or other, and there would not have been any suffering. The other is not responsible at all. You are responsible, and unless you take this responsibility consciously upon you, you will not change. The change will become possible, or easily possible, the moment you realize that you're responsible for it. If you have suffered, it is your choice. This is what the law of karma is. Nothing else. You are wholly responsible. Whatsoever happens, suffering or happiness, hell or heaven, whatsoever happens, ultimately, totally, you are responsibility. You are the responsible party. This is what the law of karma is. Total responsibility is with you. But don't be afraid, don't be scared by it, because if the total responsibility is with you, then suddenly a door of freedom opens. Because if you are the cause of your suffering, you can change it. If others are the cause, then you cannot change. Then how can you change? Unless the whole world changes, you will suffer. And there seems to be no way to change others. Then suffering cannot end. But we are so pessimistic that even such beautiful doctrines as the law of karma, we interpret in such a way that they don't free and liberate us, but rather, on the contrary, they make us more burdened. In India, the law of karma has been known for at least 5,000 years, or even more, but what have we done? It is not that we have taken responsibility upon ourselves. We have thrown all the responsibility on the law of karma. That is what is happening because of the law of karma. And we cannot do anything, nothing can be done, because of the past lives, this life is such. Whew. The law of karma was to free you. It was giving you total freedom towards yourself. No one else can make any suffering for you. This was the message. If you are suffering, you have created it. You are the master of your fate. And if you want to change it immediately, you can change it and the life will be different. But the attitude. I have heard once two friends were talking. One was a bona fide optimist, the other a bona fide pessimist. Even the optimist was not too happy about the situation. The optimist said, if this economic crisis continues, these political catastrophes continue, and the world remains the same as it is, immoral, then we are going to be reduced to begging soon. Even he was not too hopeful about it. The optimist, that is. When he said, we are going to be reduced to begging, the pessimist said, from whom? From whom are you going to beg if this condition continues? You have a mind and you go on bringing your mind to everything. Really, you transform the quality of every teaching and doctrine. You defeat Buddhas and Krishnas so easily because you convert the whole thing. You color it in your own way. You are totally responsible for whatsoever you are and for whatsoever world you are living in. It is your creation. If this goes deep in you, you can change everything. You can change. You need not suffer. Don't choose, be a witness, and bliss will happen to you. Bliss is not a dead state. Suffering will go on, continuing around you. So it is not a question of what happens to you. It is a question of how you are. The total ultimate meaning comes from you and not from the happening. Can anybody who's been on here see how these readings have all intertwined already? That I started out expressing just my mother's simple story of, things aren't done to us. And we can't fix people around us. And again, when you think that the external needs to change, it all starts on the internal. And that we choose the polarities on this pendulum swinging, when in reality, if we just sit central and you go, no, I don't choose to go that direction because it's against the opposite. Choice is where the suffering is. The passion for one or the other is where the suffering is. It's the denial of that because you want this that creates the suffering. That the conditions must be met according to here, instead of just sitting with what is and seeing the bliss in it all. And that the polarities are just simply opposites, but when you come to center, believe it or not, neither one will exist if you're in that state, that awareness, that moment. Contrast is because there's an imbalance, and you need to make them whole. Integration of the two becomes wholeness, oneness. It is. It's not this or that. It just is. But that's where breathing and coming into the present moment is so imperative. That can't be spoken or emphasized enough. That if you want true bliss, You need to sit with it all and just embrace it all and not fight it, not push it away, not try to run from it, because all that resistance, what you resist persists. Pushing it away creates, again, it coming towards you even stronger. So, that was my reading. Any questions, any feedback as to how you feel about all of that? Does it resonate with any of you? I just never know, but it's always so beautiful to me because I love reading through it, and I always get reminders, and it reinforces what I already feel and know in my own heart. So I hope that was a beautiful read for all of you. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. You know where the group is. Go live. Share what you have, right? If you feel inspired, read your own journal entries. If it interests you also, we may be putting together a special journal group. And I can give you feedback on what's going on. Or even suggestions. I hope you all have had an amazing Monday, and that you're able to sit with the witness, look where you're at, and trace it back. Sending you my love, lots of blessings. I hope this really served those of you who got to witness it. Have an amazingly blessed evening. Keep it raw, stay rad. I love you.